Yeah, it is a privilege to introduce to you our Zone Director, Floyd Lancia, who serves as Rotary Director for Zones 30 and 31, which stretches from Ohio to Texas and is known as the heart of America with a total of 30 districts. And as your district governor, I report to him. Floyd joined Rotary in 1970 and is the recipient of the Rotary Foundation's highest recognition, the Distinguished Service Award, the Rotary Foundation's Meritorious Service Award, and the Rotary International Service Above Self Award, and many other recognitions and awards. Please join me in welcoming Zone Director Floyd Lancia.
Thank you, George. What a special time for me not only to be with you in District 6150, but to follow John and Mike talking about the foundation. What a critical time we have with the coronavirus preventing some of the things that we need to do in order to help stop the spread of polio. And Mike pretty much hit the nail right on the head, and so did John when they were talking about one case in our country will cause a spread just as the coronavirus has spread in our country. So I ask you to use that QR code, make your contribution because, as John says, a portion of the annual fund comes back to your district in 3 years. And whatever contributions you make for polio will be matched to the one by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You know, this is a difficult time, but it's a special time because when current president, well, for the next few days, current President Mark Maloney, in January of a year and a half ago, selected his theme of Rotary Connects the World, who in the world would have thought that we would be connecting in this fashion? You know, this is like my third conference today, and I was online 7 hours yesterday. But it's okay because I get an opportunity to spend time with Rotarians, friends of mine, who are at this meeting, who I normally would not be able to see in person or get a chance to chat with. This coronavirus thing has caused some difficulty, but clubs and districts like yours are experiencing a variety of ways to stay connected and to continue doing service projects and fundraising events. You know, we must, as Rotarians, clubs, and districts, we must adapt to changes. We need to do those changes, but we need to keep it in a positive way so that we can continue doing the work that both Mike and John spoke of, not only here in our communities, but around the globe. And as Rotarians, we need to be flexible. And you're doing that today, creative and imaginative, in order to keep our activities positive and keep the ball rolling in the right direction. As Rotarians, we need to adapt and improvise and overcome and continue to face the coronavirus and continue doing the things we need to do that causes Rotary to be what it is today and tomorrow. You know, not but a few months ago, Rotary celebrated its 115th birthday. And if you go back to the 1905 when our founder Paul Harris and his friends met for the very first time on February 5th, the reason they met was for fellowship. And they maintained a bit of flexibility in how and where they met. As you may recall, they rotated from office to office. And that's how we got our name, Rotary. It's still important. We may not rotate from place to place, but nonetheless, we are connected through fellowship in so many other ways. Another way that we stay connected is how we deal with one of our core values of leadership. And when you think about the opportunities that we have, especially when we hold different positions in our communities, you know, some of us are professional business people, doctors, lawyers, business people. But when we join Rotary, we have an opportunity to become leaders in our community, not as individuals, but our individual talents stretch well beyond where we would be capable of doing if we were not united. So Rotary brings us together in a united way. Together, you see, we have an opportunity to provide mentorship, especially for young people. Now, we may not know who those young people may be, but once we bring them into our clubs, we find that they grow in leadership. Because what I find is that young people in my club and other clubs generally bring a great deal of energy and enthusiasm, wanting to get things done both locally and internationally. And when you speak about integrity, we all live and abide by the four-way test. When we make a decision, hopefully we think about the four-way test and are we truthful and fair to all? Will our actions build goodwill? And of course, will we be beneficial to all those with whom we engage? And as Rotarians, we maintain a high ethical standard in business and professions, and we recognize the worthiness of useful occupations by dignifying each of our Rotarian friends, no matter what their occupation is. Because you see, we all belong to Rotary so that we can serve society. So those four values of the four-way test that we use. Let's consider diversity as another. Rotary has always supported diversity. As you can see from a variety of meetings and club events and district events that you attend, we come from a variety of race, creed, religious commitments, and political persuasion. See, Rotary touches something in every single person that goes deep in the hearts of each one of us. It's easy for us to commit to diversity because you see, when we look into a person's eyes, the first thing that we say, or see as we become, whenever we become a Rotarian or when we're in a Rotary meeting, is that we see in their eyes that they are a potential friend. And service certainly is a thing that kind of binds us all. We all come from a variety of clubs, some large, some small, some newly formed, some not so. And there's a variety of clubs now that exist, corporate clubs, passport clubs, e-clubs, and so on. Imagine what your community would be if there was no Rotary Club. The ability that Rotary gives us to provide service is really the ability to expand ourselves well beyond the bounds of each of us individually. See, service is a gift that gives for generation after generation, and the application of the ideal of service in each Rotarian's personal, business, and community life remains what we foster and encourage for the betterment of our communities. I call these core values touchstones. Touchstones are what makes Rotary unique and what will make Rotary preserve into the future. There's no better time to be a Rotarian. Every day is a good time to be a Rotarian. But today, with the social conditions and the health conditions, I'm proud to be a Rotarian because I know that the things that I do and the people that I come in contact with, we share and spread the word of doing good. So let's think about it. In 1905, when Paul Harris and his friends started Rotary, it only started in Chicago, as you know, with 4 individuals. But within a few years, it became a national organization, and before you know it, it became international. And the important thing about Rotary is the way it involves young people. Now, I'm not familiar with whether you have an Interact or Rotaract or we have RILA or Youth Exchange, but involving youth in Rotary in innovative ways will find that those young people will provide us service in our communities. So as long as we keep Rotary alive in the hearts of young people, Rotary will have a secure future in the world. So Rotary stands for international understanding, goodwill, and peace. And the advancement of these principles throughout the world and the fellowship that we live in and business professions that we provide our families with unites us in the ideals of service. So every time we become engaged in any of the 7 areas of focus, now that we have one for the environment, we create a bond of trust that finds a repository in the hearts and minds of all people that our service touches. Our service is extended through the world because it makes it a safer, kinder, and more peaceful place. Our Rotary of today will not be the same of tomorrow. Just as your meeting today, we've learned to pivot from in-person meetings to virtual meetings, and Rotary today cannot be the same as what it will be tomorrow. So think about the future. There are clubs that have already decided that they're going to get together and meet in person with social distancing. A club that I spoke with the other day is planning on beginning in-person meetings the middle of July. They're taking reservations, so they'll only allow 3 per table. But at the same time, they're going to be doing virtual meetings. So think of that. The future of Rotary will not be the same as it is today. And when I was district governor, the president of Rotary International was John Kenny. His theme was, "The future of Rotary is in your hands." And thanks to each Rotarian, Rotary will continue to evolve as it does. See, Rotarians will continue to advance the international understanding, goodwill, and peace as we offer ourselves in service above self. You know, many of you were locked up at home as I was. You know, I kind of say locked up, but really we were asked to stay at home during the virus. It's been a couple of months. But what I did when I was home, I did an awful lot of Rotary work, of course, as many of you may have done. But I also did some catching up, cleaning up, sorting, and pitching a lot of things that were on my desk that I thought for someday I would probably need those because they're extremely important, only to find out that they're not so important when you put things in perspective. But while in the process of working in my office, I had a thought. And the thought brought me back to a Charles Schulz book written for children. Charles Schulz from Muncie, Indiana, is the author of Peanuts. And the book that he wrote is entitled Be Kind, Be Brave, Be You. I want to share some thoughts with you about that book. Because as Rotarians, we need to be kind. What do you see in your community or in your club that needs to be done? Do you reach out to the club president or the district governor and say, "Hey, I see a need here. Let's reach out. Let's do something because I know there's an elderly person in my club who can't make it to the grocery store. Can we do something to deliver groceries or some other essentials?" There are other clubs that are making donations of their food that they normally would pay for at their meetings, and they're donating the cost of their foods to pantries or other organizations. There are also many who have just make a phone call to a person who is homebound and shares kindness to relieve loneliness or help them realize that they're not alone. And what about the many young families who are feeling overwhelmed because they're trying to teach their kids while they're home, working on their business, running their home life? A difficult time for them. So as Rotarians, let's be kind. Let's bring a smile to someone's face. Let's ask them to be happy. Let's ask them to connect with you. And as a Rotarian, be brave. It's easy to sit back and say we can't do anything because the coronavirus prevents us from doing it. However, in a lot of the meetings that I've attended, just like this, I hear a lot about good things that are being done. Some clubs are holding fundraisers virtually while doing social distancing, while doing service projects, using this medium or other mediums to do that. See, many clubs are meeting just the way you are. They're having interesting speakers from any place in the world because it's so convenient. And what a great way to be connected and learn about so many things in other parts of the world. You know, Mother Teresa once said, "We cannot do great things, but we can do small things with great love." So be someone to somebody. Be brave. Be a Rotarian. And be you. You know, we're all Rotarians, and we all know that our motto is service above self. We also know that it's not a plaque that you just hang on the wall and look at it frequently or infrequently. In these times, we need to be creative and imaginative as we look at ways to do small service projects while maintaining social distancing. Inviting a prospective member to join you in a Zoom meeting or this type of a meeting is a great way to introduce someone to our organization. You see, they can do it from the comfort of their home, and they can experience a discussion with someone perhaps from another part of the world. So think of the fun ways that you can be you while being a Rotarian. And being a Rotarian, you know, we need to encourage and foster the ideals of service as a basis of worthy enterprise and so on. To develop acquaintances as an opportunity for service, and to maintain high ethical standards with the four-way test and so on, as I mentioned, while keeping in mind the application of the ideal of service that each one of us as Rotarians want to and do. You know, Rotary has survived so many different difficulties. This is just one, the pandemic that we now face. Nearly 100, well, a little over 100 years ago, the Spanish flu was another. H1N1, Ebola, other pandemics, 2 world wars, the Vietnam War, and so many other things that could have destroyed us, could have taken us off the track. But no matter what the setback was through all those years, we endured, and we will continue to endure, because we know the meaning of Rotary and we know the importance of serving others. I have 5 points I'd like to leave you with. The first is, don't go back to normal. Keep embracing what you have learned virtually. Continue doing some of these. Do a hybrid, whatever works best for you. Number 2, look at your future. Where do you want your club or your district to be in 5 years? Thinking of where we are today, and how will you progress to be where you want to be in 5 years? And look for members who you can attract, who are a good fit for your club, and who you will be a good fit for them. Can you meet their expectations? And 4, Mike, this is for you. Remember our promise to the children of the world to eradicate polio. So contribute to Polio Plus. And last, and certainly not least, have fun in Rotary. Thank you for allowing me to share some comments with you today.
Well, thank you, Floyd Lancia, the Rotary, or Director of Rotary International, with us here today for District 6150. Thank you very much for those positive comments and taking a few minutes with us. You know, one of Rotary's 6 areas of focus has been to promote peace. You know, that has been difficult in recent times, and the pandemic has only made things a little more challenging. But how has Rotary's approach to peace building changed to promote cohesion and inclusion?
Okay, I'm unmuted now, I see. Okay, good. Well, you know, you don't know, but inclusion, diversity, and equity is a critical concern of Rotary International, as it is with others in the world. The president of Rotary International and the incoming president of Rotary International have scheduled a meeting in July, and they have selected a task force to come back with the recommendation that will be discussed thoroughly at that meeting, that has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, that doesn't answer your question totally about peace, but we need to have those sorts of things that take place in order to have peace in the world. And along that same line, as you know, we have peace centers. And one of the areas of focus, as you mentioned, is peace and conflict resolution. That will always be. And if you think about the variety of areas of focus that we have, you can't have peace without water and sanitation. I mean, you can't have peace with a variety of other areas of focus. They're all interconnected. There are instances where there's conflict over water. So peace is an important aspect of it, and with the peace centers, there are nearly, well, there's slightly over 1,000 now peace graduates who now go out, graduate, and then go to conflict areas and try to create peace throughout those areas. I hope I've answered your question.
Absolutely. And it's events like this that we share ideas. We cross-pollinate ideas, right, from district to district. And you mentioned you were on different Zoom meetings for 7 hours yesterday. Had been on 2 or 3 already today.
Yes.
What are some of the great stories and events, positive movements that you're hearing across Rotary in the U.S.? Can you share some details from what you're hearing?
Sure. One of the meetings I mentioned that I was at the other day, I heard John talk about the happy bucks. Well, they do happy bucks. So I said, well, how do you do that? I mean, you're on Zoom. How do you do the happy bucks? Well, apparently there's an app on a phone that everybody's got it on their smartphone, and then they just commit to that, and it sends it to this fellow with got the collection, whatever you call it. I don't remember the name of the app, but it was clever. And then he writes a check to the foundation or to the treasury or whatever they do. I mean, that was just one interesting thing I found. Another is, like I mentioned earlier, there's more than one club, including mine, that's thinking about meeting in person, but sending out a request or RSVP so that they can social distance and have enough meals, because there are some who will not come. And the fact that we can also run simultaneous virtual meeting while we're in person. Seeing senior leaders meet with so many organizations because of the way it is now, it's really rewarding, and it's so touching to see that, President Holger, I don't know, I can't even get a hold of him. And Mark, President Mark, he's got a few days left, but I mean, his schedule is like booked. Tried to get him to do a video the other day, and I mean, it's almost impossible to get through to him. So those are the kinds of stories, I guess, that really are touching, because senior leaders are always available to share their stories and to be with you and to give you the latest and newest things. And just to remind you, there are now 7 areas of focus, and the 7th area of focus is environment. That was a huge thing that came. It was voted unanimously by the Board of Trustees. That's where the areas of focus begin. And then just the other day, it was approved unanimously by the Board of Directors. So there will now be 7. And again, just as peace is a portion of every single part of the other areas of focus, environment will be as well. So just allowing me to ramble on a bit. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Very important. In fact, John Deacon, District 6150 Governor, just mentioned in the chat window, I hear that the environment is the 7th. So you
Yes.
nail on the head there. One of the 5 focus points that you had for us, one of them is, look at our future and where do we want to be in 5 years. In terms of Rotary International, where do you want the club to be in 5 years?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that because the board has a special committee that has been established that's entitled Shaping Rotary's Future. They gave a report at our meeting just this past week. It was pretty comprehensive. There'll be another one coming out in October, and then there'll be a timeline. I don't want to go into the details of how it actually is, but Rotary International is looking at the future of how we will be in the next 5 years. And what will happen is most probably those of you who are on that remember Future Vision, there were 100 districts that were selected in order to go through that Future Vision exercise for 3 years. And in all probability, they'll do 100 districts who will do the similar situation under Rotary's Shaping Rotary's Future. So that'll come out sometime late fall.
Absolutely. Backing up and speaking of the environment and it being our seventh focus, give us a little history of that. How did that come to be? And I mean, we all know the importance of making sure that our environment is there for future generations. But what are some big takeaways there and why that was a big focus?
Sure, and this is not attributed to any individual in particular, but those of you who remember Ian Risley from Australia, he was president just a few years ago. Well, his whole focus, well, not all his whole focus, but much of his focus as president was to plant trees. And wherever he went, whether it was a 100th anniversary celebration or whether it was a district conference or whatever it might be, there was always a period of time where he was there planting trees. And talking with him just a few weeks ago, I guess he was hoping that there would be 1.2 million trees planted during his year. That's a number of Rotarians.
Wow.
Well, it ended up being in excess of 4 million. After 4 million, they just lost count. So that was an impetus, one of the impetus. The other is a more recent Rotary president, and that's Barry Rassin, who's from Nassau, Bahamas. The consideration for what happens with the oceans over a period of time could very well be that most of the islands in the Bahamas could be underwater. So there's a concern there as well. So it's important that we all jump on board and look at this thing as really critical and do what we can to help preserve our environment, not only for us, but for our future generations. So hopefully that answered your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Floyd Lancia, Director, Rotary International. You have a busy schedule, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
It's my delight, and say hi to the folks. Really with Zoom, I can see all the photos, but I can't see them. So hi to everybody that I know, and I hope you have a great weekend and a great year, because next year the theme is Rotary Opens Opportunities. So there you go. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much.